Next, from the state capitol, Senator Sen Dan Biss introduces a plan to require small businesses to establish an IRA-type retirement account for their workers. Senator Biss says the vast majority of those who retire have not saved enough to support the lifestyle they had when they were working. This runs about 20 minutes.
Members being present, we do have a quorum. Today's only bill is going to be subject matter only. There will be no votes. This is a subject matter on Senate Bill 2400, Senator Biss's bill. We have Terry Martin from the Illinois Channel seeks leave to videotape. Leave is granted. We have Senator Conley. Thank you for joining us. So we have here we have quite a good balance of proponents and opponents. I just have a written one. Phil Lackman, Vice President of the Government Relations for the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. For the senators, if you look on your tablets, you will see that we have 11 digital proponents from SEIU to Spencer, going from Woodstock Institute, Delia Coleman from the Donors Forum, Gian Foreman, Jennifer DeLeon from the Lutheran Advocacy, and there's 11 names here, and also there are 8 digital opponents if you look also, so I'm not going to go through this. I'm going to have a subject matter, so I don't know how Senator Biss wants to handle this. I know we have a couple of committee members that have to go to some meetings, so you tell me.
Well, I would first request leave to present from here.
Leave is granted.
Awesome, thank you. If I may, first of all, I want to thank the chair for her indulgence and the committee for its indulgence. I know it's an extraordinarily busy time of year, but I think this is an important long-term project to deal with a very, very severe social problem that we face. And so I'll just go through this very quickly, and there's a few witnesses I know who'd like to speak if you'd be so kind, and then, of course, we'd be thrilled to take any questions. But the issue that this bill, Senate Bill 2400, addresses is the question of retirement security for private sector workers. And this is a rapidly growing and extremely severe problem. You think a generation ago of the concept of private sector retirement security as being built upon a so-called three-legged stool of Social Security, a pension, and savings. And we all, of course, know that private pensions have more or less evaporated, but also as a result of a lot of turmoil in the financial markets, private savings have been extraordinarily low in the last few decades as well. And so what we're seeing is a growing number of people retiring essentially into poverty. Now it's the case already today that 90% of retired, over a third of retirees in Illinois rely on Social Security for 90% or more of their retirement income, and that's of course simply not what Social Security was designed for. And so the question is, what do you do? What do you do about this problem, again, of substantial and rapidly growing true poverty in retirement of people who worked in the private sector their entire working lives? And the proposal here is, I think, a very, very common sense, low impact proposal to encourage savings of private sector workers. And what it does is the following. It takes as its first jumping off point the fact that a very large number, around 2.5 million of Illinois workers, work for employers who offer no retirement plan of any sort whatsoever in supplement of Social Security. And it simply says that employers in that position who employ 10 or more workers would, on an automatic basis, default their employees into an IRA program where 3% of their wages would be deposited into a pooled fund. This would be optional. Any employee could opt out, but the default nature is a critical component of it because study after study after study after study shows that that's what's needed to get people to save. The money would then be, as I said, pooled into a single fund. The fund would be invested in the private sector in a process that would be overseen by a board of 7 entities that would go through the ordinary procurement process, and then the money would follow the worker, and the science on the subject says that for an individual who would be saving 3% of their wages throughout a career in a well-run, low-fee IRA, that in addition to Social Security is enough to replace typically around 60% of final salary, which is enough for a more reasonable form of retirement. So when you think about this problem, and it is a very, very serious problem that our entire country is facing, most of the actions one could take to address it are very, very high impact, either in terms of cost to government, cost to employers, or administrative burden to employers. This is the only proposal I've seen that doesn't include any of those features. It exists at no cost to government, at absolutely minimal cost to employers, at minimal administrative burden. It's an entirely employee-funded mechanism that nonetheless enables for an adequate retirement. And my view simply is that if we don't take some substantial step on this issue in the next few years, we're going to be looking at an extraordinarily severe crisis 20 and 30 years down the road when the current generation of early middle-aged workers enters retirement. And of all the steps we could conceivably take, this to me is the one that's the most consistent with a market philosophy, that is the least intrusive to the employers who would be taking a very, very minimal role, and which is at no cost to government. And for that reason, I think it's a very sensible way forward, and I would urge this committee going forward and our Senate to think seriously about what we could do to enact this program or a program like it so as to relieve this very, very severe burden from society in the coming decades.
Thank you. This bill has been around a while, as you know. I carried this bill for a couple of years, but I know that, it's a great concept. I think it's, we have to worry about those folks that are in the private sector if they are not offered any kind of 401ks or any type of pensions or anything. So you're right, this is a very important thing. I know that there's been resistance in the past regarding this bill.
I believe there still is.
I just noticed that, I think you've added a few more than I had, okay? So, but I think it's very important. I just think that, that we want to hear from both sides. So if you want to be able to pick one or two from each side, I'd be happy to bring the 2 proponents up and then 2 opponents. How about that? All right, let's rock and roll.
Thank you. My name is Spencer Cowan. I'm Vice President for Research at Woodstock Institute. I did the study that quantified the number of private sector workers in Illinois who do not have access to an employment-based retirement savings plan. As Senator Biss said, it's over 2.5 million who do not have access. The Senator is correct. Social Security is replacing a smaller percentage of pre-retirement income than it did in the past, and that's aggravated by the fact that the retirement age is going up. More people are taking early retirement, which means that they're collecting an even smaller percentage. We definitely need some sort of supplemental savings plan, and I believe that this particular proposal is a very, very good start to making it easier for people to aggregate and save for their own retirement.
I will start. I'm Denise Gaines, the Illinois Legislative Director for SEIU Healthcare Illinois and Indiana. I just have a couple of remarks that I want to state. SEIU represents about 90,000 members. Our members include hospital workers, nursing home workers, home care and child care workers in the state of Illinois. We also are members of a steering committee called the Illinois Asset Building Group, working to find ways to increase assets and ownership and protection, especially for and among low-wage workers. Senate Bill 2400 is a very innovative solution that creates the first steps towards attaining greater levels of what we call retirement security, which we all want to achieve. An automatic IRA plan would be a professionally managed savings plan, as you heard, that achieves economies of scale. Particularly, it's more reliable, it is affordable, and the great thing about the plan that we enjoy is that it's also portable, because a lot of our members do change jobs quite often. You've already heard a lot about Senate Bill 2400 and how it works in a big picture look, but our thing is we want to do is bring it a little bit closer to home to our members. The vast majority of our 90,000 members have little or no access to employer-sponsored retirement options. This includes the over 50,000 home care workers and child care workers that are paid directly by the state of Illinois. They are not a part of the pension plans that you all hear so much conversation about. Our members they do many things. They keep kids safe. They help people with disabilities get in and out of bed. They lift people out of hospital beds as well. These workers have little hope when it comes to retirement security, and they have limited access to real retirement saving options. As a result, they are among what you hear about quite often, the 41% of Illinois people that are sort of near retirement age, that the 55 to 64-year-olds who will subsist almost entirely on Social Security income. Senate Bill 2400, we believe, will create an opportunity for these workers, the hundreds of thousands of our workers, many of which who make low wages, to begin saving for retirement in a safe and cost-effective manner. It would also allow for our tens of thousands of healthcare and home care and child care workers to save and to have employer-sponsored retirement options for the very first time in their lives. And this was also, I think is very important, very little cost to the employer. In our eyes, this is sort of a win-win situation for all the parties involved. It's cost-effective, it's a way for employers to offer sort of an important benefit, and it's a straightforward option for retirement savings for our employees. And this would be the first step, I think, for the state and in our country to really address the family retirement system. And we hope that this is something that you truly consider. And to our membership, and if many of our members were able to be here today, they would tell you that this would be a wonderful step in helping them think about their futures and their retirements. Thank you.
Any questions of the proponents? Oh, yes, Senator Hayne. And let me add you to the roll.
Ma'am,
Let me add you to the roll.
thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
De nada.
Okay. And I want to thank Senator Biss and the distinguished chair for this bill. It's a very interesting concept. So you have adopted the theory from the Heritage Foundation that the automatic IRA is simple for employers. I'm reading from this publication dated February 5th. It does not impose a burden upon employers. They need do little more than they do now with income and payroll taxes. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, just flesh that out for us, would you?
The
What do they do?
the proposal is the employer enrolls the new employee and essentially is a conduit where 3%, it's a payroll deduction. I get a payroll deduction for commuter pass. So it's right within the system that 97% of employers now are using some sort of either software or outside provider for payroll services. So this is adding one line. And the problem is very widespread. It's throughout the state. I will point out that in your information packet that you have, we've broken down the number of employees without access by legislative district, and it's over 50% in every legislative district.
Oh, okay, now, so after do they call the employer in to say, I'm going to deduct 3% from your pay and sign you up? What do they do?
I
At the
believe
shop
that-
level?
I believe that's handled as a routine part of HR, as you would with any new hire. When I started at Woodstock Institute, I had to fill out the W-4, I had to make my health plan elections. This
Sure.
would be very much the same. It would be very simple because the default is to enroll and to have the 3% into an age-targeted investment program. So that unless the employee wants to make changes, there's really nothing more than signing up for it.
But these are not new employees, these are longtime employees. The employer calls them in and says, I'm going to enroll you in an IRA and deduct 3% of your pay, right?
So you're talking specifically about the creation of this program?
Yes. What goes
Yeah.
on, it says here that it does not impose a burden, but the employer has to sit down with the employee and say, I'm signing you up pursuant to this law passed by Senator Biss, and you're going to pay 3% out of your pay, unless you don't want to.
Yes, that's right.
Every employee.
So, for example, you as a state employee just recently got information about health benefits choice period. There's a constant communication between employers and employees on the topic of HR, and this could be added to that communication in the instance of the initial enrollment.
Okay. You don't see that as a burden at all? I mean, I'm
Well,
asking, I don't know.
I see it as an extraordinarily minimal burden. As someone who, in another context of my life, has an employee, I see it as an extraordinarily minimal burden and something that could easily be done in the ordinary course of human resource management.
Well, I know, but there's, okay, and then they send, when the employer says, what's going to happen to my money, the employer says it's going to go to what? You were going to say.
I believe it goes to a professionally managed fund, and there are, I believe, 3 options, with the default being an age-targeted investment. So my investment would be different than a younger person's investment.
I mean, referring to Senator Biss.
I
Yes,
believe he was
he's
referring to you.
considerably younger than I
You're
am.
being very kind. But the employer still has to explain this to the employee, why the employer is taking 3% out, right? In some communication. I'm just searching for why the employers are opposed to this. The NFIB is opposed, the Chamber's opposed, on the theory that this places them in a collision course with many employees who say, hey, what gives? Why am I losing 3% of my pay every paycheck?
So I think we're going to have an opportunity to hear from them. Maybe not. Maybe they've changed their minds in the last few minutes. It's been a persuasive afternoon so far. But I think we'll have a chance to hear from them. But I don't think I'm misrepresenting their position to simply be that they are, as a matter of course, opposed to any form of a mandate, that I think they would acknowledge this is a comparatively modest mandate. I would acknowledge that nothing is 100% free. It will not cost 0 person hours. It will cost a tiny number of person hours, and that it's something which is a substantial step towards solving a really giant social problem. And I think when you look at the cost and the benefit, the comparison is, to me, frankly, overwhelming.
Senator, I do admit that most of your supporting documents are from the Wall Street Journal and the Heritage Foundation, 2 of the most conservative publications in the land.
And the National Review.
So I salute you on that.
This is a serious point, Senator. This was initiated by the Heritage Foundation. This has been written up favorably in the Wall Street Journal as well as the National Review. This is a concept that in 2008 was supported by the presidential campaigns of both Barack Obama and John McCain. This is, I would argue, a very, very market-based, individually guided, moderate solution to a giant social problem that will require some solution, and every other solution I can think of is way, 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 way higher impact on employers, government, or both.
Senator Dan Biss, we just heard an informational committee hearing on your bill, SB 2400. Were you surprised by any of the objections that you heard from individuals?
No, I'd heard these discussions before. This is a fairly significant bill, and it has attracted a lot of discussion. And I've had informally a lot of the conversation that we had in the committee hearing. And look, the concerns are legitimate. What I think they don't take into account is that they're ultimately fairly modest, and the benefits of doing this correctly are just huge. Very, very, very significant and very important to society.
And when the money would be collected, the 3%, which is of the gross income, correct? It would be pooled. Who would hold those funds? Would they be invested with a private sector like a Vanguard or something like that, or does the state hold that?
That's exactly right. They would be pooled, and then the state would issue a request for proposals, and a private entity would wind up investing the funds. This would be a privately managed individual retirement account.
I was confused by some of the comments because it made it sound as if the state was going to be holding the money, and I don't know if maybe some of the people who are disagreeing with you understood that or not.
Those who oppose the bill find it convenient to say, hey, look, this is the state managing money, and look at the pension fund, that didn't go well. The truth is it's not the state managing money. The state's only function is as a conduit to get the money in the hands of the private vendor who would then handle the management.
I was going to say, when I've worked at different places, like at C-SPAN, they set up and say, if you want to participate in the 401k program, many people do that. They say, here's the pool of assets you can go into. They limit you from going into pork belly futures or really radically high-risk ventures. I guess it would be, your ideas, as I understand it, would be somewhat analogous to that kind of a operation.
That's exactly right. There'd be three different options: a target date fund that's more aggressive when you're younger and more conservative as you're nearing retirement. And that's the default, or individuals could, if they wanted to, put their money in the more aggressive or the more conservative fund for their whole career, depending on their preference. But the default is the most simple, commonly recommended target date type of investment strategy that most investment advisors advise today for most workers.
And it won't keep it much longer. Just, have you run the numbers? If you took an average salary and people put 3% in and they got an average market rate of return, what would that amount to over the course of, say, 40 or 45-year work career?
Over the course of a 40 or 45-year career, it would amount to replacing around 20% of their final salary. And when you consider that Social Security does around 40%, that gets you to about 60%, which is what's considered kind of on the low end of adequacy to maintain a standard of living.
All right, Senator Dan Biss, thanks.
Hey, thank you.
The Illinois Channel's coverage of legislative issues is underwritten in part by AARP Illinois.